Jāti paccayā Jarā marana soka parideva dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā Sambhavanti. Now that we know about the four kinds of beings, let's go to the next link. Jāti paccayā Jarā marana soka parideva dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā Sambhavanti. Because there is birth as a condition, aging and death arise. We can't avoid aging and death. They are a matter of cause and effect. But this link is not only concerned with aging and death, right? There also arises sorrow, lamentation, bodily pain, mental pain, and burning in the mind. We will discuss this. First, Jāti paccayā Jarā marana. When you have Jāti, there's Jarā, aging. What is aging? Most people think, I'm still young. Actually, you're not. When we were living in our mother's womb, although we started out very small, we grew bigger and bigger. This is decay. It's aging. Some aging is visible, and some aging is not visible. We can't see a diamond age, right? Although it may not be visible, it is still aging. But what about human beings? Jarā takes place age by age. The Buddha would sometimes explain it as being like a fire, burning, burning, burning all the time. You have heat in your body, right? This is paccayā, or fire element. It burns all the time. Because this paccayā is burning all the time, we become older and older. So, although we might eat well, sleep well, and enjoy our lives, Jarā is burning, burning all the time. It burns in every moment. For this reason, we are getting older and older and older every second. But we don't know this, right? Indeed, most people don't know this. They don't think like this. Most people have thoughts like, I'm still young, I haven't aged a bit. Or maybe someone will say, wow, I haven't seen you in years, you haven't aged a day. We get all excited. Thanks. Really though, it's not like this. Jarā burns all the time, year by year. How much does a baby weigh when it's born? Maybe 7 or 8 pounds, right? Then, this small baby becomes a big baby. The big baby becomes a teenager. The teenager becomes a young man. The young man becomes a big man. The big man becomes an old man. This happens from age to age, right? What does Jarā mean? Oh, you grew up. It's not growing up. It's Jarā. What about marana? We die as we go from a big baby to a teenager. We die as one age becomes another age. A teenager becomes a 120 Jāti paccayā Jarā marana, young man, or a young lady, right? Oh, a young lady. We don't usually call mothers young ladies, do we? Not yet. Maybe old lady is something we hear more often. From age to age, we are getting older. From age to age, we die. This is marana, or death. Think about this. Our life is very short. It's very, very short. If we compare it with celestial lifespans, what do we see? Even for beings living in the lowest celestial realm, 50 years for us is but 1 day for them. Beings in the second celestial realm live for just a day as we live for 100 years. Our life is very short compared to theirs. Let's think a bit more about our lives. Let's say you are 60 years old right now. It's been about 60 years since you were a very young baby. Yet it takes only an hour to reflect on the entirety of your life experience. You might reflect, I can remember experiences from when I was just a toddler, and I also remember doing things when I was a teenager and a young man. You can remember all of these life experiences, right? My parents used to bathe me in the sink when I was a baby. I eventually went to school and made friends. After I finished school, I got married and started a business. Now, I'm retired. You can think about all of these in detail in 1 hour, right? 60 years is not all that long, is it? You can remember all of these life experiences. But if your life was truly long, you wouldn't be able to recollect all of these experiences in such a short period of time. Now, though, you can. This is because our lifespan is very short, and our lives go by very fast. Some people say, I've already lived in Las Vegas for 10 years. The time has gone by so fast. What's this mean? Time seems to move quickly, doesn't it? We can't finish everything we'd like to do in a single day. This is because time moves so fast. This is actually Jarā marana. It's very fast. We're dying every day, right? But it's not only every day that we die. We also experience khanika marana, or momentary death. We die every moment. By we, I mean mind and matter. Our physical body, our matter, arises and disappears many, many times in a single second. Our mind does so 17 times faster than our rupa. This is momentary death. We die often. This marana is very fast. Meditators should understand this point. 121 Las Vegas, Sayadaw. People often say, "Oh, that person died." This is conventional usage, but exactly what does it mean to die? Death consciousness arose, continued, and then dissolved. After that, there was rebirth consciousness. It's just temporary, right? Death is the temporary end of life principle, body heat, and consciousness. Please remember this. What's death? It is the temporary end of life principle. We have rupa jivita and nama jivita, right? These terms refer to life principle. In addition to this life principle, death is the temporary end of body heat and consciousness. We call this the end, but it's not the end. It's temporary. When we studied the first chapter of the second book, we learned about non-returners and arahants entering into cessation attainment, or nirodhamapatti. When they do, there's no consciousness, no mental factors, and no breath. But they still have life principle. They also have body heat. So an arahant who attains nirodhamapatti has body heat and life principle, but lacks mind, consciousness, and mental factors. They still have rupa jivita, but they don't have nama jivita. This is because nama jivita is a cetasika, right? They do not have cetasika during nirodhamapatti. So what's the difference between an arahant in nirodhamapatti and a dead person? Now you can understand the difference, right? A dead person has no life principle, body heat, or consciousness. What about mindless beings? How do they differ? They have life principle for rupa, right? But they don't have consciousness. Do they have body heat? Among the four primary elements, one is teho, right? Yes, they have this. So, Jarā and marana. Why do we get these? Why do we get older day after day? Why do we die moment by moment? Because of Jāti. Jāti paccayā. So Jāti is the cause, and Jarā marana is the effect. Now, what about soka, parideva, dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā? How are these different? How many factors are there in dependent origination? Only 12, right? Please remember that dependent origination consists of 12 factors. What are they? 1. Avidya 2, Sankhara 3, Vijnana 4, Namarupa 122, Jāti paccayā Jarā marana 5, Salayatana 6, Phassa 7, Vedana 8, Tanha 9, Upadana 10, Bhava 11, Jāti 12, Jarā marana. These are the 12 factors. Notice how the 12 factors exclude soka, parideva, dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā, and upāyāsā. These 5 kinds of phenomena are not included in the factors of dependent origination. Why? Because these 5 kinds of things are incidental consequences of birth. This means that they may or may not arise for all beings. As human beings, we may come across all 5 of these. Some angels, however, may or may not. As for Brahma, not at all. These 5 things are not equally experienced among the range of all living beings. They are only experienced by some. Others may or may not experience them. It is for this reason that they are not included among the factors of dependent origination. Thus, dependent origination has only the 12 factors I just listed. How do soka, parideva, dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā, and upāyāsā arise? Why do they arise? Let us study that next week. We need to know why soka arises. Likewise, we should know why there is parideva, lamentation. In the same way, we should understand why we might experience pain, grief, or despair. Why? There are so many things we need to discuss here. For this reason, let's conclude for today. Thank you. Cool. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Today is the 27th of June, 1999. Last week, we started studying Jāti, paccayā, Jarā, marana, soka, parideva, dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā. It's the last link. But I forgot to tell you something about sankhara and kamma. Avijja paccayā sankhara. What is the reality of sankhara? Cetana, or volition. Remember that? And what is the reality of kamma bhava? The same. The realities are the same, but they differ. 123. Las Vegas Sayadaw. So what's the difference between sankhara and kamma? Sometimes you want to practice generosity, right? You might think, I want to donate something. This thinking about wanting to practice generosity is called sankhara. But when you actually make the donation, it is kamma bhava. So what's the difference? Past and present. The past volition is called sankhara, and the present volition is called kamma bhava. In other words, an action done in the past is called sankhara, and an action done in the present is called kamma bhava. It's past and present. As we've studied, avijja paccayā sankhara and sankhara paccayā vijñānam. Because of sankhara and avijja in the past, there is vijñāna, rebirth consciousness in the present. So past life volition is called sankhara. Here, sankhara paccayā vijñānam. Sankhara occurs in the past, but vijñāna occurs in the present. Let's say someone kills another person. The activities leading up to the act of murder are sankhara. Volition at the time of killing is kamma bhava. The person's thoughts might have been, I'm going to kill him. Every thought, every consciousness has cetana associating with it. This previous cetana, volition, is sankhara, but at the time of the murder itself, it's called kamma bhava. So that's the difference between sankhara and kamma bhava, past volition and present volition. This could be in the past life and then the present life, or it could be earlier in this present life and then currently in this life. Q. So sankhara is also the actions one takes toward killing? Or is it just mental? No, volition is just mental. It's not physical at all. This is very clear, right? If you want to do something, maybe a good thing, or perhaps an evil thing, you're thinking before you act. This is sankhara. At the time you actually do the act, it is called kamma bhava. They're different, right? Last week, we were talking about jafila bhavu, in rebirth, and Jarā marana. Because of rebirth, Jarā marana arises, and so on. When our lives first started is inconceivable because we've had so much Jāti, many lives. The Buddha explained this to us. He said that if we preserved and kept the bones of a single being over the course of its many lives, the bones could be piled up until they became a 124 Jāti paccayā Jarā marana, big mountain. The ascent to the top of the mountain would take about 4 days. Some beings are born without any bones, though, right? This mountain would only contain the bones from lives when the being actually had bones, not those lives when he didn't. How many Jāti is that? Many. When it comes to Jāti Levaroi, we don't know how many times we've done this, and after we have rebirth, death is unavoidable. When you walk somewhere, reflect upon how with every step you take, there is not a place where your bones or ashes have not been discarded. There are people who want to build a new house but first reflect, I need to be sure that this house won't be on top of any old burial plots. Really though, every place is a burial plot for beings. Not just us, of course, although some of the bones or ashes also belonged to us over many lives. Do you believe this? Our lifespans are small, but we have to be reborn again and again if we can't overcome this cycle. So please reflect, with every step you take and every place you sit or sleep is ancient ground containing the bones and ashes of your prior lives. Anyway, last week we already talked about Jarā marana, right? As we become decayed and are about to die, sorrow and lamentation arise because we don't want to die. We don't want to be separated from our dear and beloved ones. So today, I would like to talk about how soka, sorrow, parideva, lamentation, dukkha, bodily pain, domanassa, mental pain, and upāyāsā, despair, arise. These things mostly arise when we're confronted with the loss of relatives, but really, we have 5 kinds of things we can get really upset about losing, right? What are they? 1. Loss of relatives. 2. Loss of wealth. 3. Loss of health. 4. Loss of good conduct. 5. Loss of view. When we lose any of these 5 things, we can experience sorrow and lamentation. These will arise. For this reason, I want to discuss them one by one. 125. Las Vegas Sayadaw loss of relatives. Loss of relatives refers to losing relatives, family, dear friends, anyone who is dear or near to us. When someone like this passes away, how do you feel? Sad, right? Sorrow arises. There's not just sorrow, though. There's lamentation, too. You might cry, right? You cry over the deaths of those you love. It's not just sorrow and lamentation. There can also be bodily pain and mental pain. When there is mental pain, there tends to be bodily pain as well. Additionally, there may be burning in the mind or despair. These things accompany sorrow and lamentation because this feeling is not normal. We feel very, very sad when someone close to us dies, right? We might go to the funeral and cry so hard that we lose consciousness and pass out. Right? This is like a fire burning the mind. It's burning the mind so badly that we can't stand or sit, so we pass out. We might even die because of it. Why? Because someone in our family or perhaps a dear friend or other beloved one has died. When this happens, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair arise. Yet, in the moment, we don't see why they arise. So why? Because you're attached. Attachment is one of the asava, right? When you are confronted with the death of a near or dear one, sorrow, lamentation, and so on arise. At the same time, any of the 4 kinds of asava arise. Do you remember what they are? What are asava? They are mental intoxicants or mental defilements. These asava will arise. What are the 4 kinds? 1. Kamasava, sense desires. When a near or dear one dies, you're not merely attached to the person themselves. You're also attached to the form of the person, their sounds or their touches, right? This is sense desires. 2. Bhavasava, attachment to existence. You still want to live nearby and be close to that person. This is attachment to existence. 3. Ditthasava, wrong view. 126. Jāti, paccayā Jarā marana. You might reflect, oh, I can't believe I've lost my mom, my brother, my husband. This is wrong view. Really, what are they? 5 aggregates. Just mind and matter. As we've already studied, the 5 aggregates are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and uncontrollable. But now, you think, arg, my beloved mother has died. Because of your wrong view, sorrow and lamentation arise. 4. Avidyasava, ignorance. Because of your ignorance and misconceptions, you think this person who has died somehow belonged to you. She's my mom. Again, sorrow and lamentation arise. So when someone close to you dies, sorrow and lamentation arise. As they do, any of the 4 kinds of asava can also arise. There could be kamasava, attachment to sense desires, bhavasava, attachment to existence, ditthasava, wrong view, or perhaps avidyasava, ignorance. Loss of wealth. The second one is when you lose your wealth or material possessions. Someone might steal our property, or maybe a fire burns and destroys it, right? When our property is destroyed or taken away from us, sorrow and lamentation arise. Why do sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair arise? Think about the 4 asava again. If you're attached to your property, it's kamasava, or attachment to sense pleasures. What about bhavasava, or attachment to existence? You had a good life, but now you think that the loss of your property will negatively impact your quality of life. How about dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā, or wrong view? You lose sight of the fact that none of your property will last forever, and that this fact is beyond your control. And you can't forever maintain control over your belongings, can you? You might want your property to always remain under your control, but it's impossible. Failure to recognize this is avidyasava, or ignorance. According to circumstances, that is, according to the law of karma, or cause and effect, we lose our property. When we do, sorrow, lamentation, and so on arise. 127. Las Vegas Sayadaw. Can you see how there's kamasava, bhavasava, ditthasava, or avidyasava when we lose our relatives or our property? Of course, loss of relatives doesn't only mean that they die. You might lose your son, but it might not have been because he died, right? Maybe he moved away. The same applies to losing your spouse. Maybe there was a divorce. If that happens, how do you feel? You lost a near and dear one, right? Because you did, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair arise. This happens because of your attachment to sense pleasure, and so on. We've probably all heard stories of businesses failing. We hear about very rich people who did well in business suddenly losing the business and all of their wealth. Sometimes the person reacts so strongly that they kill themselves. Or maybe they're so angry that they want to kill the person responsible for the failure of their business and the loss of their property. When you lose your material possessions, sorrow, lamentation, and so on arise. Once again, this happens because of one or more of the asava. There could be one of them, or perhaps 2, 3, or even 4. On the other hand, if there's no asava, no sorrow or lamentation will arise. See, it's cause and effect. Loss of health. We can be inflicted with disease in times of health. This causes us to feel uncomfortable about our condition. We might worry about the need to have an operation, or perhaps whether we might have cancer, right? As we have concern about our health, sorrow, lamentation, pain, and grief arise. Sometimes people, especially Asian people, will look in the mirror and study how their hair is going from black to gray. This makes them unhappy. This change of color reflects decline or decay, right? People will look at their skin, their teeth, their eyes, and feel unhappy about the decline they see. Why? Because they're attached to their body. They are attached to their hair, their teeth, their skin, their color. This is kamasava, or attachment to sensual pleasure. There can also be attachment to existence, right? Not only that, but there could be wrong view too. These people might not realize that the body is uncontrollable. We have to get older and older. 128. Jāti paccayā marana. Loss of good conduct. There are people with good conduct. That is, they keep the 5 precepts. They never kill animals or other creatures, never steal someone's property, never commit sexual misconduct, never lie to people, and they never drink alcohol. This is good conduct. However, there might be an occasion when someone who keeps these precepts is confronted with a challenging situation. For example, maybe a friend or a boss, in a high position of power or authority, invites the person to a party. At the party, the powerful friend or boss might want them to have a drink with them. The virtuous person might say, "I've never drank alcohol in my entire life." But the powerful companion might say, "I'll make sure you are successful in your career if you celebrate with me now and have a drink." So what might happen? Out of concern or coercion, the person drinks the alcohol. Maybe the powerful friend or boss convinces him to go fishing the next morning too. Coming home that next afternoon, the person might reflect, "All these years, I've never drank alcohol or killed a fish, but I did today." How might the person feel? He might feel bad about his virtue, right? He might feel bad about his loss of good conduct. Sorrow arises. He might cry too because he really loved his good conduct. When he thinks about his loss of good conduct, there is grief and pain, right? In the Jatakas, the stories of the Buddha's previous lives, there's a tale about a monk practicing meditation in the jungle for many years. Unfortunately, along came a lady who got him to change his mind about monkhood. He got together with the lady and lost his good conduct. Later on, he cried about it. He wasn't crying for the lady, but for the loss of his good conduct. Sometimes, a person will ordain as a monk or novice for a few months so that they can practice meditation. They do this just temporarily because they want to learn and study and practice meditation, knowing that they will eventually have to return to lay life and their job. During their time in robes, they come to see the difference between a layperson's life and monkhood. They're quite different. As the monk or novice gains concentration, they understand more about life. They decide that they don't want to go back home, yet they know it's necessary because they have to take care of their family and their parents. Thus, they disrobe. 1, 2, 9. Las Vegas, Sayadaw. Most people cry when they disrobe. They cry when it's time to go back home. They enjoyed their life as a monk. They want to practice meditation and stay at the temple, but they have to leave and return to work and daily responsibilities as a layperson. What's crying? Lamentation. So these people experience sorrow and lamentation when they have to disrobe. How do they feel? You can see that there's mental or physical pain there. They feel unhappy about their loss of good conduct. Sorrow, lamentation, bodily and mental pain, and so on arise with the loss of virtue, loss of view. This last one concerns us losing our view, our ideology. Specifically, this is talking about loss of good view. When we do, sorrow, lamentation, and so on arise. Let's look at some examples. Some governments will take power and control of a country, right? I'm talking about the example of communism. Sometimes countries will occupy other countries and establish communism. What's their idea? What's their aim? Maybe you know. Their aim is for everyone to be the same. They think that everyone should be equal and on the same level. This is how they think. But how can we be equal? Even fingers, born at the same time, are not equal. You certainly can't make people equal. This is because they have different karma. Thus, they have different knowledge, different intelligence, different features, different religions, and so on. They're not equal. They are different. Even twins, with the same parents and going to the same schools, have different lives. The idea of having the whole population of an entire country be equal is impossible. Yet that's their effort and their aim, to make everyone equal. So what happens? We're very close to communists in the country where I come from. It's scary. There's China, Laos, and Cambodia. They don't believe in anything. What I mean is that they reject the teachings of the Buddha, no doctrine of the Buddha, and no Buddhist monks. So what do? They kill monks, or they make them disrobe and go to work. They burn and destroy temples, and burn the Buddha's scriptures. You can see this if you go there. 130 Jāti paccayā Jarā marana. In some of these places, they don't honor or respect their parents either. Sometimes, the people will kill their parents. They've killed millions of people in these countries, and those who don't follow the communist policies will be killed. As I said, millions of people have died in communist countries, especially when the communists first start to establish their policies. They kill a lot of people, destroy a lot of buildings and temples, burn scriptures, and especially kill monks. They tried this kind of thing for many years in my country too. It's not always the government doing it. One group in my country tried to take control of the country. At that time, the Chinese government supported them in their efforts to overthrow the Burmese government. This went on for more than 30 years. Many of these were Buddhist people who decided to follow the Chinese Communist government, but their goal was not successful, and they eventually had to surrender. The Burmese government then came in and arrested them. Later on, the people felt very sorry about what they'd done. They realized their mistake. What about Cambodia? You've probably heard about this. They killed millions of people, destroyed temples, and assassinated monks. China and Cambodia have done these things. Later on, though, these people sometimes realize their mistakes. Before they became communists, they had good views. When they think about having lost their good views, in some cases for 30 years, they feel sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair over the many, many evil things they did. I'm just offering examples here, right? But whenever these people reflected upon their mistakes, they felt sad. They feel tormented by their anxiety and remorse. I've been using communism as an example. What about someone who practices meditation? Do you remember when we talked about the two friends who practiced as if they were a dog and a cow? They believed that this was a good use of their life. But when they realized that their view was wrong, they realized their mistake. They felt sorrow over their practice of so many years. This is sorrow. They cried over it. And that is lamentation. They cried because they had lost their good view. 131 Las Vegas, Sayadaw. So, just briefly, I've explained to you how sorrow, lamentation, and so on arise with the loss of our relatives, our wealth, our health, our good conduct, or our view. When sorrow and lamentation arise, asava also arise. Then, asava samudaya avijja samudayo, because of the arising of asava, mental intoxicants, there arises avijja, ignorance or misconceptions. We have 4 kinds of asava. Let's look at these one by one. Because of kamasava, there arises avijja, ignorance. This means that you don't understand realities or the truth. Because of your attachment to sensual pleasure, there is ignorance. If you go to the store and see something expensive that you like, you might get so excited, I've got to get that you buy it without considering whether you can afford it or not. You're so attached to the idea of acquiring this thing that you overlook its affordability. This is kamasava, right? This sensual pleasure causes ignorance. Our attachment to existence, bhavasava, can also cause ignorance. We already talked about this, right? Likewise, false views, ditthasava, can lead to ignorance. And ignorance in the past gives rise to ignorance in the present. This is avijjasava, right? Yes, past ignorance gives rise to present ignorance. So what does this last statement say? Consider this carefully. It says, avijjasava samudaya, avijja samudayo. What does dependent origination look like now? It's become a circle, right? Dependent on ignorance, sankhara, kama formation, arises, right? Dependent on kama formation, vijnana, rebirth consciousness, arises. Dependent on rebirth consciousness, nama-rupa, mind and matter, arise. Dependent on mind and matter, salayatana, 6 sense bases, arise. Dependent on the 6 sense bases, phassa, contact, arises. Dependent on contact, vedana, feeling, arises. Dependent on feeling, tanha, craving, arises. Dependent on craving, upadana, clinging, arises. See this? Dependent on clinging, kamabhava, action, arises. Dependent on action, there is Jāti. Because there is Jāti, there is Jarā, marana, soka, parideva, dukkhadomanass'upāyāsā, aging, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. And because of asava, avijja, ignorance, arises. No beginning, right? It becomes a circle. This is our life. 132.